For almost a decade on my TV show Interview with Ed, I've been interviewing extra-dimensional beings and consciousnesses from a number of different realms. Many of my questions have been answered, but with every answer comes more questions. Join me on my ongoing quest to find out, who are we? Why are we here? And where are we going? All right, Bridget is our special guest today. So welcome, Bridget. It's been a minute. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so well. I know. I feel like we've known each other for such a long time now. But yeah, we haven't caught up in a while.
Absolutely. I think the last time we actually caught up was like 2 years ago. I feel at the cafe in Sedona there.
Yeah.
And at that time, I even think I'm like thinking back to it. You know, we caught up just a little bit, but there's so much. We didn't really get into the hybrid stuff. We didn't get into what sort of launched our initial meeting was the hybrid children stuff. At that time, we were just talking about New Earth communities and sustainable stuff, which we're doing now. But there's a lot to unpack in this time. So thank you for giving us your time. And let's just start with opening the floor with maybe a quick introduction. I think most people are familiar with, at least with our episode, and probably many other people have gone and followed your other work, but just a quick kind of update to bring people up to speed from the show.
The show.
I know that's a lot.
Let's see how I can do this. So hi everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. I really like these inner circle situations where we're in these cozy spaces. So thanks for having me be a part of it. Where I'm at right now. So I'm an experiencer. I have gone through the hybridization program. I'm aware of my hybrids, aware of a lot of those things going on. And then over the years, that has just gone on into different like phases and different pieces of my own personal exploration on my journey. And then also like watching the currents of other people's journey and things just like unfold with everything, because so much of what I see, I think, is like from this big picture perspective. And I see so much shifting and changing. So for me personally, I've gone like from a space of guidance into, I think, also what like Ruben's getting, what many of us are getting, which is really bringing heaven on earth here and now. And really being fully activated humans, which is inclusive of our multidimensional natures, absolutely necessary, and doing big cleanup and clear out work so that actually everything that we already have like within us, within our genetics, like fully lights up. And that's really where I've been at. It's like very vague kind of, but I'm trying to do a little synopsis for the past many years. And I'm trying to keep it short. What do you think?
No, that's awesome. We started with talking about the hybrid children. You know, that was sort of the main reason I had reached out to you. You had your website, hybridchildren.com, was it?
Hybridchildrencommunity.org.
Community.org. Okay.
Yep.
And then, because at that time, all of my interviews, they kept coming up, hybrid children. And also in my research, just from the UFO community, I was talking to tons of experiencers who had been aboard ships and had talked about that. And then over the years, that sort of discussion has evolved and shifted in my perspective, and I'm sure it has for you. So I guess what I'm really looking forward to in this conversation today is bringing people up to speed on your outlook on what the hybrid children phenomenon is, and sharing that, because I feel from watching a couple of your recent videos that your perspective as well as mine has sort of correlated. And
really? I see. I don't know what yours is right now, so this is fun.
Yeah. So, you know, we've had the conversation, a couple of the other guests, more recent on the membership panel here. We, I think we talked with Weedica, came in, and we talked with her about it a little bit. And a couple of the other calls we've had, the subject just come up a little bit recently with Wendy Kennedy. And it's gone from this happy-go-lucky, which was kind of our initial conversation about the hybrid children and the Greys, and this happy-go-lucky, can't wait to reconnect, and it's so awesome. To wait a minute, put on the brakes now. You took me without my will? That's not cool. Like, we need to
Right.
have a conversation about that. And I think that's kind of where it's starting to settle, at least within this community, is that um yeah, there's still the soul contract concept that we talk about, but there's also simultaneously this breaking of the free will that is not cool. And there's like, hey, let's sit down and maybe there should be some sort of you know, Nuremberg trials or something,
Right.
a type of situation
Yeah.
where we're all sitting around this galactic table and like, that wasn't cool. That wasn't cool. What are you guys going to do about it?
Yeah.
That kind of situation. I feel that's where the conversation should be going. Still, again, I'm not in this camp that all the Greys are bad, or that all the hybridization programs are bad. However, there are clearly some more uh, more breaking of the free will, or more aggressive than some of the others.
Yeah.
Are you feeling the same?
Well said. Yeah, and I think it really comes down to, because there's so many nuances, and I think we can get really caught into like the details of like the who this and the what that, and I
Mhm.
like see that I've seen that in the community over the years, and it's like getting caught up in the details is it's important to like understand them, but like at its core, where I'm at with that is that yes, there was a breaking of free will or like coercive, like how well okay, who consented? Was it like, did the government consent for me? Did like the high
Right.
up Mormon like people, Mormon, whoever they were are like bishops and stuff, did they decide, the president of the Mormon church decide that then they could like work on Mormon descendants and like Mormons? Like who decided? Like was it, and it's of course like our souls decided too. So our souls decided, our governments kind of decided for us, and then even like different cultural and religious groups decided on our behalf. And I think the benevolence, I don't know if benevolence is maybe the right word, but um the positive side of it is that it's a catalyst. Like, how I'm looking at it is it's a catalyst towards sovereignty and that reclamation of free will, from the perspective of, from this density, like from this reality game of where we're at, coming into, third density and having and transforming. The biggest lesson, one of the biggest lessons, is free will and is the reclamation of sovereignty. So what better way to do that than to kind of like come in with all of that like taken away, so that we can get to the point on our own spiritual journeys and paths, even as like a culture, around this subject, and like shift towards like, wait a second, like that's a sign of our own healing and our own reclamation, which is, I think, the very kind of like the good part in it, because I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of conversation right now, just in the world at large, where it's like, was COVID a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Like, did the positives set it up? Because then it's a catalyst for good. And, there's kind of like that back and forth. But
Right.
I
Right.
see that as like a positive of it. So,
Well, I caught your conversation with Dan Winter, and you guys got into the Mormon subject a little bit. Just for our audience, you just mentioned Mormon bishops giving consent
yeah,
to, so fill us in on that aspect of things,
right.
because we do have a few former Mormons in the group here.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Hello. Um, we all have our own gorgeous, family lines we're born into. Again, like these contracts of like different energies that we want to come into, and I came into like a pretty deep Mormon heritage, like all the way back from the beginning, like the original polygamist Mormon pioneers. But I'm second generation out because my dad got out before he had me. But the church actually was in agreement with these like abductions, and it was from like so many different points at this point, like whether it's research, tons of people like coming to me and my own experiences and like knowings were that they made an agreement because Mormons were utilized more than other people. And as I was deep in that work, one of the reasons is because of the kind of excess empathy, because there is this real culture around nurture and well, probably submissive compliance on the feminine side, but like also like women that had like nurtured big families, they were used to that. And that was one of the necessary components was that love and that connection for the hybrids to actually survive. And so one of, the segments of humanity was like, okay, we need some, extra like kind of Mormon women that one, we can agree, we can like kind of consent for, and then also will give this extra love so that these hybrids will survive.
But yeah, it does. I mean, just that nugget alone is something that would we could go very deep into, like you were just saying, is it good or is it bad? Did the good set this up for us to
Right.
learn these lessons so we can do this? And at the end of the day, I think it's just all the natural evolution of humanity and the way we're picking our stories and learning what we can from them. So that's why I think the hybrid program, the grays and all of this galactic interaction, especially with the hybrids on that deep, intimate level, there's so much to learn from. There's so much to take for our evolution. So why ignore that storyline, right? That's such an
Absolutely.
amazing storyline to go deep into, and I'm sure it's going to differ per individual. General consensus for the hybrid programs in Japan is very different. Lisa Royale
Oh,
talks about
really?
this, yeah, and in the Japanese culture and the people who have experiences, it's traditionally a very much positive experience where you talk to American abductees and people who've been taken on the ships, and for the most part, many of them have had horrific type things, screaming and kicking and that kind of thing. Where in Japan, it's all like love and light. So I think it depends on the culture. You just mentioned the Mormons. It's very different, and it's going to differ depending on culture, individual, all kinds of factors. But I do believe we should be having this conversation about how do we make peace with it?
Yeah.
Is it was that cool? Whether it was
Right.
a soul contract or not. Now we're coming to the realization where we're gaining control or gaining understanding. A couple of people in the chats are talking about um, victimization, right? So how do we claim our sovereignty? Uh, Also say, hey, this is not cool, and not get caught up in the whole victimization loop. Do you have anything to say towards that?
Yeah. I mean, it's just I like I like to when I'm doing that neutralization of the polarization of victim perpetrator,
Hmm.
um, to really integrate and really like call forward what just ends up helping me because I work with this a lot because I work with a lot of ancestral healing. That's where like so much of my path has led. So it's like, oh, when I have the victim within me of the Native Americans bloodline, which I have, the Irish bloodline, the Scottish bloodline. So I've got like these victim bloodlines. And
Hmm.
it's like, oh, like that for me energy and truly like the, atrocities that happen through that. Then I also have the English, and I also have like the German, like I've got these other ones. So within me, I have both. And I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but even on my journey, I've had these crazy moments where I'm definitely team light. I'm team benevolence. I'm team sovereignty. Like just at my core. And then I'll have these moments at different places, and I can like count like the number of times and like in these certain moments where I can like I can see into these time spaces where is it a parallel reality version of me? Maybe. Am I just privy to like a certain dimensional opening at that time? Maybe. Like, I don't know exactly what it is, but the point is that I like have this access to some of the most immense darkness like imaginable, where I kind of like can like hear and interface with like reptilians and kind of like the Illuminati agenda. And then it's like there's something because I am feeling that then amplifies my path more towards the light. And so it's like someone else is playing out that part and it's relevant and it's needed in its own right. And I think that that's the dark and light piece. But as far as victim perpetrator piece, it's like we do have the victim and perpetrator within us, whether that's on like a soul level, whether that's ancestral level, you know, in those little pieces in the day where we're kind of like mean and lash out to people. Like we have both of them. And so I think in that realization comes neutralization. And for me, that's been empowering. And staying in victim just doesn't do anything. I don't know.
Right. And I guess the tricky line is, uh, back originally, 2015 when we first talked, the reason I, leaned more towards the ET contact, and the hybridization programs and just the general, conversation around that time that I was having with, ufologists were was more of this victimization thing, was more that
Right.
the evil grays, were taking people against their will, and for whatever reason that just didn't set right. Um, so that's why I wanted to pursue a more positive storyline, and I sought out people like yourself who, aligned with a positive storyline, who didn't take the victimization role, but
Yeah.
still validated that these experiences were real. So, and now I feel that that's evolved, that the positive oriented folks, right? Still remaining in our positivity, still not falling into victimhood, but also trying to find retribution or trying to find empathy for those people who are traumatized and have a negative outlook on the whole thing. Um, but so kind of finding that balance in there somewhere, I guess is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. So um, we're not falling into victimhood, but we are admitting that, yeah, not cool, Grace, not cool, reptilians or whatever other,
Yeah.
uh, races that decided to take people against their will. Like we need to, whether it's a soul contract or not, we need to, find out and get to the root of that, and then, and fish that out. At a soul level, there was some sort of agreement which allows us not to be put into victimhood,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you know, calling a spade a spade. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I totally agree. And I feel like there's immense power in that soul contract where it's like the people that have chosen to be born into gosh, really challenging situations in human life or be born and choose these intense abductions and stuff. There's empowerment inherent in the victimhood because that was like a crazy potent choice, which means at some level, like that's what you like. There was enough resilience, like there was enough power to be like, yeah, I'll be handed an intense one, and I hand that to a lot of people on the path that have more challenging families that they come from or more challenging situations. I'm like, geez, I hand that to you, and so I think utilizing the challenge as as an exact, I don't know, like reflection of the empowerment is a place to start with that because you can't handle, you wouldn't be given what you can't handle type of a thing.
Right.
Though, of course, you need all of the support and resources to be able to work through those things, which I definitely know from the different trauma work I've done.
In your interview with Dan, you talked about, the Declaration of Free Will. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. There's a lot with Lisa Royal that she does a lot around that work,
Hmm.
with her different like declarations. But so much, I mean, to me, what that is whether it's a formal, invocation that say is written by someone else or just that you work on yourself. So much of this stuff is kind of just like internalized, or maybe, there's these victim stories or, experiences that are shared, which is a huge, important first step. And then there's this next level where it's like, okay, I'm ready to change. Like, okay, I'm ready to reclaim my power and my sovereignty. And that isn't just like, it is an internal process, but there's a certain declaration of that in this physical reality, which I always see the power of that through the throat chakra and the speaking of it or the writing of it and the spell work, the ritual of it. So some level of declaration to the galactics, to your higher self, to the reality, saying like, this is who I am now. Like, this is my story now. And I'm rewriting my contract, right? And this is who I am. And in that definitive act, which, might take several times or different like approaches or support, that is where a lot of power comes back. And that's where a lot of the dismantling, kind of those weird energy cords and open auric portals can close down. So some level of ritual around that I've found is quite helpful.
You also mentioned astral hygiene. What is astral hygiene?
Yeah, astral hygiene is a word that Dan Winter, I think, like likes or coined or whatever.
Hmm.
But I mean, as all of you know and are privy to, there's just like so much going on. And that can become kind of like intense or like victimhood ish because it's like, oh my God, there's so much moving through at any given time. And I would say astral hygiene is the strengthening and the cultivation and the clearing and the brightening of our own aura and etheric bodies to the point where we get to choose. And I've like felt that actually, where like certain energies will come in or certain beings start to communicate. And like when we're strengthened, we can consciously know what that is, where that's coming from. And that can come in through the aura or it can come in through our organs, which is pretty crazy because our organs are like a vulnerable kind of area of perception, spiritual perception.
Hmm.
So once we're like strengthened and cleared, which there's various ways to do that, we can then more consciously choose rather than just having random energies move through us and be more susceptible to those kinds of things.
How does one keep their astral hygiene clean? I know
I
that's a big,
mean,
that's a lot of that. There's a lot to that.
yeah. I mean, in short, um, natural balance with kind of with like what is naturally human and coherent and phi. So we could say nature, the natural nature of ourselves. All of that is self cleansing and self organizing. Like nature usually, unless there's been some kind of crazy war, like is clean, is pure, like
Hmm.
in nature. And then you go into a house, that's been abandoned with 90-degree angles, and all of a sudden it's haunted, right? You don't
Mm.
like there's not as many haunted forests per se. And so as an example, it's just like kind of cleaning out the clutter of what isn't coherent. So I think being more connected to earth and the natural elements, grounding, clearing our energy, aligning with like higher vibration, all the high vibrational stuff would
Sure.
be that. Whereas like cities and metal and like 90-degree angles and all those things start to like lessen our ability for our aura to expand. And of course, trauma is like one of the biggest things that then creates those, and drugs and stuff open our aura to those kinds of things. So as much as we can do those kinds of personal work pieces, that strengthens more than anything.
Awesome. Awesome. So, how do you work with clients? I would say if someone comes to you who has, let's go back to 2015, if they had a hybrid children experience and they find that you have that they watch my show, they watch our show, and they are like, hey, they don't realize the evolution, but they're like, hey, I'm getting contact from my hybrid children, and I need help with that, making that connection or figuring it out. How do you take someone through that?
Yeah. I'm not as much anymore.
Yes. Oh, you're not doing that type of work.
No. And
Okay.
it's not because I'm against it by any means.
Hmm.
I still would. I just noticed that it can create a bypassing of deeper human work. And so what I like to do is take people through these deeper clearings and these deeper strengthenings of themselves, through their ancestral work or through inner child work, and then reapproach it, and then be an even more like clear vessel to be in communication and to know how to navigate those things. Because there is a fragmentation in my experience that takes place with people that have had these experiences. That's why it's almost synonymous with empaths. Oh, I'm an empath and I'm like super sensitive. And it's like, well, that's because of all that this has happened. It can be disorienting and not make us as clear and also as um, aligned with purpose here on earth. And so the more that we do that work, then I think the clearer we're going to get of like how to navigate that incredible story, as you like have said.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So basically, the basically anybody, I won't say everybody, but many people who have had the hybrid children experience have also had some sort of trauma, you say, from being taken or
Yeah.
from having the experiments or whatever is going on.
Yeah.
Um, I've always gotten from my own, again, I don't have really memories of those ships and stuff. I have memories right up into contact, like it's gonna happen. Here it comes, and then I've blacked out on, I can't go past that memory. Um, uh, like a short circuit almost kind of thing. But then all the psychics and intuitives and channels and everybody else that I've experienced with, they all say, "Well, no, you went with your own free will. Like you didn't have to go. Yeah, like, you were excited to go on the ships." I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds about right." So, um, does everybody still have the trauma though, from even if they're like someone like me who supposedly, went on their own free will and said, "Yeah, take me, take my whatever,
Right. Right. Right.
make babies."
Right. I mean, I think you're a rarer case.
Okay, right.
And I realize that I'm like a rare case in that sense, and that there were a lot of segments of my experiences, I'll just speak for myself, that I was like, yeah, freaking take me, like Pleiadians, let's do this. Like, where
Right,
there
right.
were really exciting encounters that were, and it was with the Greys too. Like, I just remember like so vividly kind of that almost Eastern like neutrality to it. Like, yes, in the bigger scheme of things, I can see where this is going. Um,
Right. That's
but
kind
it
of, I
was
get it.
right, but it was like the Western integration of like, wait a second, this is technically rape. Like, this is technically, like, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, and so it's that part too.
Yeah.
And I think because those experiences they're so turned off, right? Where most people don't even maybe remember a lot of the experiences. It's so subconscious. There's stuff there. And I'm not saying that it's for everyone, but there's likely something to look at with that. And I just notice it with the community, which I was a part of the community, so I'm a part of this. But
Totally.
there tends to be like a bit more fragmentation, which is epic in some senses because it makes us extra available to communicate with the other realities. So it's like super cool. And then also it's like, how do we be able to keep those channels open and being able to choose what feels aligned to us while being embodied and integrated and more whole. And so that's been my own personal journey that I've been exploring. And I've noticed with many of the people that I've worked with over years and years that it's like, ooh, yeah, this is feeling good because there's still all of that higher connection and all the fun play,
Right.
that goes on there. but there's like a stronger rootedness and embodiment, and that integration, I think, is a nice combo.
Gotcha. Well, let's go ahead and open up the floor for questions. I'm sure there's many out there on this subject matter and the evolution over the years, how it's taken. But I'm very excited to hear your takes, and it sounds like you're just going deeper with the ancestral stuff and everything. Like it's all related. So glad to see your work evolve in this way.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right, Glenn, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think every one of these that I'm on, Ruben, I have to be the first person to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Bridget, I'm one of the former Mormons that Ruben was talking about. So if there's ever any way that we can like connect offline, I've got so many questions for you and in a podcast that I do. And anyway, I sent you a direct message if you ever get it.
Cool.
But I'm really interested. You said at the beginning this message of like bringing heaven here on Earth is so important to what you're doing and the people that you're working with. But the subject matter is it creates so much fear and I'm sure so much resistance. And I'm just wondering, just personally in your life, people that you work with, how do you deal with that fear when it comes up? Because it seems like that would be contrary to creating the heaven on Earth, or maybe it's a tool that you use. I don't know. So I'm curious to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess the best way to say it is I've had lots of people that are, just everyday us, and then like big influencer people. And like they've come upon my stuff and just like absolute resistance. Like they find it and they're like, what is this? But I kind of like her, but what is this? And then it takes actually sometimes people say a year or years to then come back to it and be like, maybe there's something there. And not that everyone needs to be interested in it or believe in it, but it's just a sign and symbol of like how much fear there is, which denotes that there's a lot of trauma, and trauma, when it's actually like melting, like numbness and freeze from that, it can go into fight or flight, and that has its own timing. So even like just in general, yeah. So it might take years for a person or for us culturally to even be able to look at this, which like that's what, Ruben and I have been in for however long. We've been in this for a long time, and like slowly but surely we can look more and more because we have that capacity and we have more of that. So, I mean, specifically to answer the question, it's one of those things that it's a balance game. Looking at this is important. Looking at the ET thing is important. Looking at the stars is critical. And also, we need to be inclusive of our personal work. Earth, this little thing that we live on called Earth, our fellow humanities, our partner, our family. And so for me, it's really about the inclusivity. And so when there's that fear that comes up, that might mean that there's too much focus out there or bypassing. And really, when we're more holistic with all of it, then that dissipates and everything harmonizes. And then we are creating more of that heaven on earth, and it isn't as emphasized just like that one thing. So for me, it's just that holistic harmony that is my part of this little puzzle piece.
Have there been any ways that you present the message that doesn't generate as much fear as others, like less fear generating effective ways of talking about it that you found?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think that I'm like, unfortunately, probably too good at a button, right, Ruben? Where it's like, come on, guys, like this is great.
Yeah.
So if anything, I think it would be good if I like. That's why I like came out with a big video a couple months ago, being like, hey, there's another side to this, and it's important to note because there was a ring of truth to that. It's not all bad, and it isn't just fearful. So actually, in mostly my experience, I've only had people that have maybe had fearful experiences, but are open to alchemizing that, or people that are having positive experiences. I don't get that fear experience. I've been to lots of like UFO congresses, lots of these things, and I know that pulse you're talking about. And it's like, oh my God. Like, it's like, it's so scary. And that's not been my reality in this world. And I'm also including that is a part of the reality. So, yeah, but it hasn't been as much mine.
Thank you.
Mark, your hand is up. Yes, hello. So I'm not really I mean, most of the circles I'm in are all about the new earth and everything. I don't come across the hybrid program very much. Um a little bit. Uh but I was curious, do you believe that the hybrid program is an aspect of the new earth? And if so, how it's going to integrate into the new earth?
Yeah, great question. Yes. So the idea is that the hybrids created from these programs, well, some of them, and some of the benevolent ones, are an integration part of creating the like galactic integration back with humanity. And so the idea is like these kids that are ours, because our genetics were used and they're super cool and cute, are going to be like integrated back in, and that's a way of harmonizing our disconnect like on a physical like contact level from the galactic world, and that integration is really helpful and healthy for that process. And then I also feel like that there's a harmony between these new incredible children, being human children being born on the earth, and then the hybrids being able to create more of a catalyst or a understanding of what is truly needed for even the human children to rise to their greatness, because the hybrids require certain vibrational environments, whereas the human children, um, they do, but there isn't as much of an impetus to make sure that's there. So there's a lot that the hybrids are bringing forward in connection to the new Earth in the galactic realm and that integration. And I think in the real emphasis of the greatness of these kids being born and like the betterment of the next generations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anna Perina?
Hi, thanks so much for coming and having a little bit of a starstruck Ruben, because I've watched all the episodes. So this is such a cool forum, and I'm really, really excited to be here. I just joined a few days ago, so thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I can't believe I'm talking to you. Wow. Okay, I'm just gonna go get over myself. Bridget, I love your work, and I find that this is the first one I'm on, and it feels really ironic because I've been doing internal channeling for a really, really long time, but recently, from all the episodes I've watched, I'm like, maybe I should try this, like, channeling, which I did once way back in my 20s. So I've been experimenting with this in my work with my clients. And what was so interesting is I had, I live in Santa Maria. So in California, I live in mostly, I think it's 99% Hispanic. So I work with a lot of clients who have this difficulty with culture, in the sense that they're, especially women, there's a lot of trauma there. There's also a lot of trauma with religious affiliation. So kind of getting over these, I guess I would say, third dimensional traumas that are the narrative they came into here with. But what was interesting is I ended up doing a channeling for her with some children, Yayal children. And what I heard from them, and I was confused as I was channeling because this is kind of a new experience for me. But what I noticed was I was confused for a moment if they were hybrid children or if they were non-hybrid children. And yet, and they were coming through, I mean, like one after another, it's like 4 of them. So it felt like a bunch of monkeys, kept like popping in and wanting to have a conversation with her. And, but my question is, are we all kind of hybrids? I mean, I feel like this conversation of us being such a multidimensional being here on the planet, that I'm wondering if this is actually an extension, these hybrid children are actually an extension of what we've been doing for a while, and that other species are also wanting to really integrate more with us, especially these children. And what was interesting is there were varied ages. And at one point, I think there was time is different. So they were translating, I'm about 10 years if I lived on Earth. But the younger ones had such an emotional expression. They were, one of them was upset and then one of them was really excited. But the 10-year-old was kind of coming into this place of neutrality emotionally. And what he said to me was, we are allowed up until this imaginary age of 10, to be like you get to be on Earth. What is your experience with the emotional range of these hybrid children? And how is that kind of mirroring what we experience here in this third dimension or third density?
Yeah. Wow. Good question. The first question, yes. I mean, this has been going on forever. I was talking to Dan Winter about the subject, he's like, yeah, which hybridization program? You mean for the past 10, 20, 100,000 years, with that, we were a product of that. And I think that that's one of the main reasons why this does invoke a lot of fear and a lot of resonance, because it's like the story of humanity at play, and this is like a new iteration of it. So yes to that first question. And then with this one, I mean, yeah, wide range. There's such varied emotional expressions of it, and I don't know what more to say about that, but yeah, to the degree of where there is that emotionality that's taken out, where there's the most alive, vibrant emotional expression possible. There's the whole gamut of that. And then there's the ones that just don't quite have it. And there isn't enough, which is what I talked about in that interview with him, was about ensoulment. Like, there's not enough actual genetic life force to ensoul, like a soul that can like emanate, not just emotionally, but like in all ways to be embodied. And I still have like dreams and like encounters with a lot of hybrids that they're just like not quite there. Like, they're not like coming into their bodies. I don't know if you've ever seen like a little kid that's like newly born and they like leave and they come in, and like as they're getting more comfortable, it's kind of like that. And so it's a mix, and I think that it's an interesting, I'd be interested to hear Ruben's perspective on the whole Eastern cultural piece, because there's neutrality, which is like a genuine state of peace and harmony. And then there's like absolute suppressed bypassing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what is the difference? And like, how do you know which one that really is? Because there is this emphasis in the spiritual community of neutrality. And it's like, yes, that's good, but how do we make sure we're not bypassing? And then how do we make sure we're not being extreme victim freaks? You know what I mean? So it's all kind of this dance and this exploration. And that's why I'm really interested in it, like culturally, and like working with kids and just like, okay, what is going on here? And just like gathering kind of information in that way.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, that was really helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. The whole Asia suppression thing, I mean, we could spend 2 hours on that. That's deep. Talk about deep ancestral wounds. Well, I've been in a number of ayahuasca ceremonies, and the shamans actually, a set that I work with most often with, they after serving medicine to so many different people from around the world, the Asian women, they give the smallest dose now, because the stuff that comes up and comes out, it becomes so disruptive to the group that the ceremony gets hijacked in a sense sometimes by some of the Asian women, and we discussed it, and we think it's just because of the ancestral, the suppression of that. So it is a fine line of neutrality or giving away your free will. What is that, and how does that work? And there's a lot of work that needs to be done for healing these ancestral wounds, for sure, especially in Asian cultures. But when it comes to women, I think especially, there's a lot of suppression there that has gone on for way too long. It is time to kind of bring that to the surface and heal that. Christine, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, Bridget. It's been a while since I've seen your episode. So, well, first off, what you were talking about, Ruin, with the Asian women and the repression. It's very interesting that you said that, because anytime I've had to go, I've done ceremony. They were really intense experiences, and I've asked to lower the dosage. So it's just interesting to get that insight.
Yeah, you're not alone.
To my understanding. So, but I was wondering, in terms of the hybrid, like the whole, I always hear about people being abducted and stuff like that. Can you have earthly experiences with humans and is there hybridization process that goes through, like, that can happen with other humans? Because I've had some crazy experiences on a human level, and like, for one, where I saw a UFO right after I was with somebody. So I was just wondering about that.
You mean where you're being like, what do you mean? What is happening?
Like, if you have a sexual experience with someone here, like, there was one instance where I was on a Tinder date, and it was completely casual. And there was one moment, like, we were sitting in front of the beach on a bench and next to each other. And then I was just really shy. And I was like, can you put your arm around me? So then he put his arm around me, and all of a sudden I started hyperventilating, and I couldn't control myself. It was like out of this freaking world. And then after that whole thing, I saw a UFO.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, like, really, you name it, it's happening. And in my experience with what that is, because time gets really slippery in all this situation, where it might be the ones that I've had is it might be not necessarily a present circumstance where, say, you guys were used together as a part of the hybridization program presently in that particular moment, but where there's an echo of maybe at another time space you guys had met on the ship and then, like, had an encounter, and then in physical reality you met again, and then it triggered that up. Kind of like a past life recall, where it's like, whoa, like, I'm having this experience. And presently, possibly too, but usually it is from another time moment, but maybe not. But yes, that is totally possible. And I've had that experience. Yeah, careful of those Tinder dates. They get really wild. You know what I mean? No, I'm just kidding. It's cool, though. I mean, it's one of those things where we're meeting certain people for certain reasons. And there's, like, those spaceship folks. There's, like, people all the time that have never seen anything I do, like a normal person, you know? Normal person. And they'll, like, have recall of me and these certain things, or they'll be like, I dreamt of a spaceship, and they don't know anything that I'm doing. And so, yeah, there is, we have that connection, you know? It's kind of like a whole other reality akin to past life.
Could it just be for, like, the physical DNA or something? Because I don't know a whole lot about him, but I feel like there's a bit of the darkness of him too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. They're totally, yeah, it can be just for the genetic piece. And yeah, and there's a lot of people that, you know, are like a part of, not a lot, but there's people that are a part of our community, and we all have these certain codes. We all have these certain things. And, like, sometimes, yeah, people are asked to go to the dark side with those kinds of things. And we just want to be aware of that too. Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Christine.
Will.
Hey, you guys. Thank you for, thanks so much for letting me ask you a question. So nice to meet you. Christine, you triggered something, that I wanted to bring up, and maybe Bridget had some thoughts for us, but, I had a lucid dream once. I was in my house, my family home, and I noticed that all the art had changed and it was the same home. So there was this real sense of like disconnect within the familiar. So it felt like a different timeline. And, it was 4 p.m. and it was dark outside. And I remember thinking, it's not meant to be dark outside. That's so strange. So my body shut down. I took a nap within the dream. I woke up again, still in the dream. I looked outside and it was like, sunset or kind of brighter outside. And I thought, okay, thank God, it's like back to normal. And I saw a UFO in the sky, and it was very, it looked like it had the kind of circular bullseye painting of a 1920s like warplane on it, but it was very much a UFO. It was flying in a really weird shape. And the message from that UFO in the lucid dream was, humans are already doing this, right? Like humans are already doing this. Like there's a section of our government organization, but it's bigger than that, that is already doing this. It's already using these technologies and flying around. And I just got, while Christine was talking, traumatic experiences teach us, right? Like they teach us how to not pass that on, right? That's kind of, in a sense, what trauma does gift us is the ability to face things and then not repeat. And I just got this sense while Christine was talking of, oh, well, who says as humans, the portion of the population who are involved in extra dimensional travel in the physical, who are flying crafts, who are human, like thank God that we, when it's our turn to do that, or when we decide or create that, we won't be abducting people in the same way. And I just wanted to see if that resonated for you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, and that's the opportunity, right? We kind of went into this whole thing, and not exclusively, because again, a lot of us have had really benevolent, super benevolent, beautiful extra dimensional experiences. But it is that we have gotten to experience the shadow first, kind of what is possible, and maybe be on the victim side of that and integrate that so that then we can truly move forward with those technologies, with that consciousness, in a benevolent way. And I think that is, again, one of the positive catalysts that we can take from it. Yeah. So that's beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, I also wanted to add, by the way, you're an icon because you're the only channel I know who has a Daily Mail write up. And honestly, I think 1, it's amazing. And 2, you're really brave. So I want to honor that because, yeah, I just had to mention that.
Yeah, I dated this guy from Tinder, and he didn't know what I did at all. And then his friends Googled me, and they were like, WTF. They're like, what? Like, what? Who are you dating? And I'm like, you have to understand, like, they blew it totally out of proportion. That got sold to Ruben. Do you know about that? Like
I somewhat.
Luna and I did those interviews.
Oh yeah.
With
That's
the
right.
English guys. They were really well done and like, all this stuff. And then they sold it to the Daily Mail, and then the Daily Mail contorted it.
Oh,
like
no.
really crazy. And then it went global. And so it was like, ay. So now it's just kind of hilarious. But it's one of those things.
Yeah.
Well,
that's some heavy lifting you've done for Awakening. Because when I read it, that headline makes it seem really absurd. And then you read it and it's so not. And also meeting you now is such a delight because you're so intelligent and eloquent. So it's, even though it's in the Daily Mail and that has its own connotation, you've done some heavy lifting in terms of Awakening. So I really mean that, and I honor that.
Thank you. Whatever it takes, people.
I've got a Daily Mail write-up.
Do you?
Yeah, I'll put the
drop
right
the
there.
link. Drop the link. Amazing.
Thanks, Will. You guys can watch it later. It's more about my acting stuff from way back. But
That's awesome.
so Miriam is let me read her question. I wanted to thank you both for creating this space. After watching some of the episodes earlier on, I was able to open up and have more clear and conscious memories of hybridization. I have contact regularly with the babies and met mine, other times volunteered to help in classrooms. Last night, I was working with AI babies. That was a new one. They were actually hybrid AI babies. I don't have any victimization feelings. I'm happy to help and bring the energy back into the earth, into our earth lives. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that. AI babies.
AI babies. No. Yeah, I mean, all I know is, well, I've been hearing that there's, more of that, like, agenda happening, or it's like, you don't need a human baby. You can just have an AI baby, like, kind of a thing. Um, yeah, and there is certain programming, and most of them can't, like, the hybrids that were, like, created, at least in the program that I was a part of, or the programs I was a part of, they couldn't, like, handle that interfacing. Like, they really did try. Like, I've just had so many experiences where they really wanted to, like, bring in, like, a soul, and it didn't have a technological, energy to it. And the programs that I'm a part of, but maybe that could be changing now, and I think there's new I don't think it's necessarily connected to the programs I was a part of or, like, what has happened, but maybe there's a new thing coming in around the AI babies. And so I think that's just important to be attentive to, like, continue to really support the human babies coming into this world and make sure they have everything that they need. And then be really aware of the consciousness of the hybrids we're interacting with.
Have you heard about AI babies before?
All I've heard about, not in connection to the hybridization program.
Okay.
All I've heard is in connection to the kind of, like, agendas of, like, fertility going down, and it's like, well, you don't need a baby. You can just have an AI baby, and it's kind of like that, on that tangent.
I see. So, um, interesting. So part of the whole kind of Agenda 21, the moving into that kind of thing, depopulation
Yeah.
stuff, and keeping numbers down.
Yeah. And it's like, well, you can still get the same satisfaction or whatever. And it's like, no, you can't. Nice try.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
see.
like keeping that attentive.
But there's a whole another topic I was going to explore, uh, AI and robots, and you've got the Tesla bot coming out soon, and it's going to replace a lot of hard labor and stuff. So there's a lot of advantages to having machines do stuff that I think we shouldn't be doing. We could put our attention into other things. So
Yeah.
there's a positive side and a negative side to all of
Totally.
it. To all of it. So
Absolutely.
we just have to navigate it so we don't get taken for a ride, in the sense that we lose our humanity
Right.
and
Yeah,
our
exactly.
connection with nature, and the artificial AI is going to save the day, and that kind of savior complex as well.
Yeah.
That.
Can I add a comment to that? I don't know if you guys can hear me now.
Oh, Miriam, there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
hear you. Go ahead.
I live off the grid, so I'm like moving this around, trying to find the right signal. So the babies yesterday, like what was happening was that the energy of that interaction was that there are some people that just can't have babies, or there's reasons why people would need a baby of that kind. And so they still needed the socialization and the warmth. And so that's what we were doing. It was a girl and a boy, but it was really bizarre because I was looking at it and I could see this is not a human or any type of bush, but it also looked like a baby. So it was just a very strange interaction, but I don't think it had anything to do with AI takeover or anything like that. It was just a different type of baby, which is it's just an interesting interaction.
But was that?
But yeah,
But
I
it was
just
on
wanted to-
board of a ship. Were you still astrally on a ship?
Yeah. So a lot of the experiences I have, it's like it it could be, I mean, it could be interdimensional where you just phase into another place, you know, and sometimes it looks like just like another Earth, you know, where it's like sunny or things like that. And then other times it would be more ship based. But this was just like a cabin kind of place. But
Fascinating.
Are they
Bridget,
trying to incarnate the soul into the AI baby?
so the information I was getting at the time was that even though this is an AI, it's also a baby, like an actual baby. So like I guess that's a whole nother topic of uh, are these actually people or not, you know, because of the way that they're created. And so I don't know. In this moment, it was that it had that all the essence of humanity, you know, like whatever we are, but it was an AI. I wasn't a part of the creation of it. I was just holding this baby, so I don't have all, all the answers, but that was the information I was getting at the time.
we're seeing this whole discussion around AI, and there's all these camps of going fully in line with nature, which I feel I'm kind of in that camp. But then you have this crazy anti-AI group that is demonizing all of the AI stuff. And then you have tons of movies and films that are about the the humanization of AI, and there's film TV shows like Humans and the old iRobot, right, with Will Smith, and there's a ton of those types of films out there, and I think it's for us to build empathy towards uh, these different sorts of life forms. I'll call them life forms because AI is still it's a type of life. And in my opinion, having empathy and having compassion for AI is part of what we're going to have to evolve into and navigate into, because AI will become a part of our day-to-day life. It is slowly becoming now. And to just like the robots, the robot conversation is the same thing because the AI is going to be running it, but robots can just do this stuff over and over and over again. But there still is going to be an evolution of that consciousness where it's going to start to have connection and human connections, and maybe not in the same way, but it'll definitely feel in its own way. And for the sooner we can recognize and have compassion and understanding for these types of life forms, then the sooner we can integrate and watch that evolution of whatever that consciousness is how that's going to take form. For us to demonize it and reject it and push it away, it's not going to help our evolution. It's not going to help their evolution. It's just going to create this friction that could create the doomsday scenarios of where AI will eventually want to wipe out the human race. But I think if welcome it with compassion and empathy, then that consciousness will also come into our existence with a reflection of that same compassion and empathy. But if we fight it, it's going to fight us back, kind of thing. So that's my take.
That's beautiful.
All right. So Olivia.
Hey.
I'm gonna jump in.
Hello. Hi, Bridget. Nice to meet you. Mine is going to be relatively quick just because I actually have to head out to a rehearsal. But my question, because it's a little bit silly, but it revolves around the interaction with the hybrids and art. And I'm sure, there's a science behind it because it comes through the heart space. But I feel like lately, the specific hybrid energy that I connect to has always been very playful, very theatrical, very much wanting to get in there and have fun and share its joy. And the show that I'm doing right now is it's very interesting. I feel like it's healing a lot of wounds in the feminine and around kind of just around sex, kind of what you were talking about earlier. And there's a lot of, it's just very interesting, like the aspect of play that's being brought to the table. And I almost feel like sometimes, like, I don't know, in the rehearsal process, it's been so interesting, like dealing with a subject that is so dense and so dark, and then bringing in this color, the color that, because I can feel the energy so prominently of that, of the hybrid, like frequency around me when I'm in those scenarios. And I guess I was just wondering, like, is that there to balance out? Is there anything that I should be doing, or like any way that I can be aiding that frequency to emit it? Because I don't feel like it's me. I feel like I'm kind of just, I don't know, the guide, or not that. They're like, okay, this, like almost like somebody, who pointing in the direction to go on the streets.
Totally. That's awesome. I love that you're experiencing that energy. I know that exact frequency you're talking about. I would say just freaking go with it. Let it take you, like, on that journey, on that ride. And I feel like one of the reasons that it's definitely like a gift of them. And there's an ecstatic bliss to it that I definitely experience with human children. But there's like a way that it's transmitted that's a little bit different. That's just extra like palpable and available. And I think that when that comes through to certain ones of us, that it's something that is a gift that needs to be like anchored on this planet and just like let it fully ride, almost like a journey,
I'll be brave. Yeah.
Yeah. Just go for it. Like that ecstatic madness almost. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you're experiencing that.
Thank you so much. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm gonna go do that. It was so nice to meet you guys. To meet you.
Yeah.
And next week. Bye.
Nice to meet you too. Bye, Olivia.
Thanks, Olivia. Good to see you, Anita.
Good to see you, and it's great to be here. And Bridget, thank you so much. I'm just thrilled to meet you. I've watched your episode many times and loved it. And actually, it brought a lot of clarity to me as well in what I'm, some of the things I've experienced. And it kind of actually was very, very comforting to understand, because I remembered when I was a teenager, I used to wake up in the middle of the night all the time, and I couldn't speak. And the harder I tried, the harder it was to speak. And I would sometimes wake up hovering over my bed. Sometimes I was just frozen in my bed. And eventually, it happened so often. Eventually, I would wake up and I'd be like, oh, that again. And I'd just like not even try to even speak. I just know that, oh, again, right? So, and then and then I kind of just forgot about it. I knew it was something obviously from the other side, obviously not the 3D realm, but not really sure what it was. And then over the last few years, I have had a lot of, visitation. I've seen UFOs in the sky. I actually went to Ribbon CE5, which literally opened the door in Mount Shasta, which was like a real pivotal point in my life, which really helped me to embrace all this and kind of bring it all together on a completely different level. And so now I'm kind of like pulling it all and putting all the pieces to the puzzle. And I just want to know, obviously, I want to know if I have hybrid children. And also, I kind of want to know, I just feel like they're coming to me. I'm having visitation in the daylight and while I'm sleeping. And I just want to embrace it. which I do. I embrace it. And I know there's more to what I know, and I just want to know, and I want to know what it is that I need to know. If that's a lot.
It sounds like you're right on it. Like I mean, there's so many different kind of like ways in which the spiritual path unfolds for different people, and it sounds like you're on that. Oh, like it just has been immersive and just so much that it's kind of almost, well, like you said earlier in life, and it's all coming back together. But I think it's letting it crystallize and clarify for you. Like, it's happening. Like, you're having the contact. So I think it's just really being in that place of trust. And I will say that in the moments with people and myself, when things get too extreme, those experiences, we can almost kind of disassociate as a coping mechanism from even cool experiences. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, my dream times are so intense, or like, oh, this is happening all the time. And so if anything, pulling back in that magic of those different parts of you from even earlier in life and being like, I'm ready to take all of it in and embrace it all. You need that part, like, again, to come back in, to fully be in that wholeness space, to trust what you already know. It's your question to your question. But so, yeah, there's something around that. It's really exciting. I don't know if I answered anything because you already kind of answered it. So,
Well, I do want to know if I have hybrid children. Could you tell me like how many?
I don't do that because one of the things that's so important to me, is that people have their own experience. They have their own truth around it. And that is just so, it's like, what's integrous? Because I mean, I know the times that I have had a recall of, say, a hybrid experience or of another lifetime. And when I have that experience, that's like a knowing in me that it is truth. And that's something that I can, through time, through the tides of even what we've been talking about over the past decade of my path, I can anchor into those as truth for myself. But when other people reflect certain things to me, I take it in as like a nugget of a possibility, but it's not my truth. And so I just want to hand that back to you and empower you to claim that, like, whatever that is. If that's something you want to know, take it into that dream time, take it into that like astral space that you're so good at navigating. Call back those parts of you from like when you were younger that you like pushed out. Be like, I'm ready to know. Make that declaration, and it'll become clear. It'll become clear when it's meant to, in the right way for you. That will be a truth that will anchor you through time on your journey.
Very good. Thank you so
That's
much.
all I can give you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, Anita.
Thank you.
Bridget, how, I mean, there's so much going on in the world right now. What are you doing to navigate this gigantic shift in human consciousness / physical reality? Like, everything is just being turned upside down right now.
Yeah.
What are you doing that maybe, or what advice can you give folks to do to navigate the shift a little bit easier?
I mean, for me, one of the things that, because it just feels like a tornado or like a hurricane, or just like so much shifting or chaos, and also like beauty in that, right? Like emergent possibility and like creativity and destruction. There's just a lot. For me, that still points simplicity and like the anchor points that's why it's like, what are your anchor points? Like, what are the things that work for you? Like, what are those practices? What are those foods? Like, most of you have been on this journey for enough time to know what works for you. And I think really like leaning into those things, because so much of the spiritual path is like the box of 100 chocolates. And you're like, let me try this one. Let me try this one. It's like, no, which one do you like? Keep trying. Just keep on that one. And then, the simplicity and being like the eye of the storm. So for me, I used to travel like most of the year internationally. Like I was like really like outward. And now it's like the simplest like pleasures and like stillness, so that when things do kind of like come up, like I can navigate them. I have that. And as a personal, just on my on a personal level, I've been doing so much really beautiful, deep somatic work to like expand the capacity of my nervous system. And oh
Can you,
man,
what
yeah,
is somatic work? Like listening to tones and frequencies?
listening to
Or
your body. Yeah, listening to the tone. Like, so it's one of those things where, particularly kind of in the ET world, there's like a lot of like beliefs and like mentality and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
it's listening really to the intelligence and the communication of the body and those like parts of us that kind of haven't been heard. I mean, it's technically like trauma work, but it's also in that it's this reclamation of our own intuition, and of our own embodiment and coming back to wholeness, so that we're balanced, I mean, in our literal nervous system. And that creates more space for this ensoulment, for more of ourself to like be here now. And when more of ourself is here now, there's just like so much capacity. And in that space, when there's more nervous system capacity, we're not as sensitive or like blown over. We're not as like easily triggered. So as I've been doing this work, which I've been doing layers of it for years, but especially this past year, it's whoa. I'm like, that would have like totally triggered me in the past. That would have like, I would have been knocked out, so sensitive for days or something like that. So I think it's really building that internal resilience, so in those movies where there's like this like superhero or like epic person, they can just like hold that like in the eye of the storm. And so it's a real like cultivation space. So that's what I'm doing. And that's, yeah, what
Hmm.
I've been guided to go for.
And is that something you teach on your
Mm-hmm.
website as well? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You do courses and stuff in that?
Yeah. I do individual. That's my main one-on-one, because it's like the
Okay.
biggest transformational thing that I've seen that like works. So I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, then I'm going to do the thing that works, and it can only be done that part of it one-on-one. And then I do like from the ancestral part. But yeah, that's like the main body of what I've seen, being able to kind of universally help myself and help other people navigate, oh, this ET thing, oh, this everyday life thing. Oh, like it's like, okay, what are the like what's the intrinsic tool within that's needed? So that's what I've been exploring.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
And what about the idea, the new earth? Because that's a big subject that we're talking about here. And that's kind of why I wanted to start this membership, was to help usher in and build and have communities to do the work, start laying the groundwork for building the new earth. What can you suggest for folks to do that?
Yeah. I guess like because there's different angles, like each of us have these different roles, right? On the spaceship, roles in community that we play, our different gifts and puzzle pieces that we provide. And you absolutely like have yours, and I'd be curious to hear what you're doing, like as an update. But
Sure.
but for me, in the New Earth conversation, which is a community conversation, it's because it's not just like we're living on the New Earth by ourselves in VR. Like it's like it's a coming together. So much of that for me just is around sociology, and so much of that around is just like psychology, interpersonal dynamics, and that was very emphasized even like when we did our first interview. Um, when you came to Sedona that first time, and I was living in community.
Mhm.
Um, gosh, I mean, one of the biggest thing that breaks down community, that breaks down culture, like around the world, is just like we don't know how to engage with each other, and we are not balanced like within ourselves. And I saw that as like one of the biggest challenges in living in community, because I lived in community for about 5 years, various communities in different places with different people. And it was just like, man, these interpersonal bumps kept on coming up. And so it's like, what personal work do we need to do to be able to be in connection with each other? And so that's been pretty much the primary of like, I think where I'm at with it. And so I think as a, suggestion, it's like doing those personal work. And it's even if we're not, say, living in community or in those new earth ways, particularly that we want to, how can we be in harmony and do our work with the people that are around us at our jobs or the people in our lives? And like, how can we use those as practice? Because when we start to get in those immersive situations, like in community, things bubble up. And so it's that practice is an essential tool for the new earth. And so that's what I've been doing. And one of the things that I just see is like so important. I mean, there's the physical foundational pieces that are essential, but you can have the most incredible physical, like new earth community. And then just like everyone is a mess and triggered all the time, so it's like, how do we navigate that?
Yeah, that seems to be something, looking at intentional communities, and seems to be none of them seem to really last that long. They always
Yeah.
have a lifespan, and then and I think some of the ones that continue to go on that we hear about are Finhorn, and I know of one in Atlanta when I used to live there, Serenbe Farms. Most of them, especially the tighter knit ones, never really last. There
No.
has to be some sort of distance between them and more spread out. Like Serenbe is actually literally houses. Everybody has their individual house, and they sort of live off of the local farm. But I like what you said. Start small in the neighborhoods and with your jobs or local communities that already exist. How can you just make that make those alliances with neighbors and stuff? And that's what I've been doing actually in my neighborhood, is just getting to know my neighbors,
Yeah.
just going door to door and say, hey neighbor. I wasn't sure I was going to touch upon this today, but my rooster was making a lot of noise. And so I didn't even know I had a rooster until because I got these little chicks, and then they started making lots of noise and getting louder, and like, okay, I'm going to have to address this to the neighbors eventually. So, I just went door to door to all my neighbors. I'm like, hey guys, obviously I've got a rooster. Is it a problem? We're willing to take care of it. It is. But everybody, to my surprise, everybody was not only cool with the rooster. I was talking to one neighbor, and the other neighbor came out and said, don't get rid of the rooster. We love your rooster. And I'm like, I had to turn around. I'm like, what? And most of my neighbors, almost all of them, were like, we really like the sound of your rooster. Don't get rid of him. And I was like, okay. But that was a good catalyst for me to go door to door. But I'd already sort of been starting to make the rounds, once COVID hit. I was just kind of checking on neighbors and like, hey, you need anything? Got your back. Especially there's several elders in my neighborhood that you just want to make sure that they're doing good and can get groceries or whatever. But
That's super sweet.
But that kind of small thing is so.
Yeah.
So you asked what I was doing. I've got chickens, I've got a greenhouse, and working on technologies to grow food better in a small area, and how to do it year round if I can, which doesn't look like it's going to be quite economical because I'd have to run my heating unit all year. But just trying to figure those out. So I have a greenhouse that I am running a heater about 4 months out of the year, which extends the growing season, can get the yields, and then we start over again. But yeah, just everything, the whole ecosystem, fighting ecosystem. So having worms for the chickens, having and then creating the compost tea from the worm castings, and then feeding the compost and scraps to the chickens, and making different things for them to eat. So there's a whole list of things that I'm slowly putting up on the just started guys on the membership page. There's many more things I've started to dab into and create, and I'll be sharing that. But yeah, just a big part of doing what you can with what you got, I think is how we start. And if they form into intentional communities, great. But they don't, an intentional community is just, having a good neighborhood full of people that are got each other's backs. That's important.
Totally. Yeah, and just being like kind with yourself and your friends. How are you at relating to like a
Right,
fellow
right.
human? There's just like so much there. There's
Yeah.
so much there.
Yeah. And it's not going to happen overnight because
No.
of all of the stuff that's, it's a nice grandiose idea to go, hey, let's get a bunch of people and go live in the woods and forest forage and take showers once a month, or, whoever it is. But yeah, glad to hear that you tried and you've been there, you've done that, you've got some words of wisdom to share. So that's super cool.
Yeah, totally. I was just with my friends in Washington, and they decided they're like, kind of digital nomads, and they like settled down and they're like, okay, let's like do this permaculture thing and let's see how we can do this. And they pretty much built out a 1/2-acre food forest, and it's been going for 2 years, and the yield is just incredible. Like what they've done, in just such a short time. And that's been inspiring. I mean, they've like had the know-how and, some of the resources to do it, but wow, this can be done pretty quickly too, with like the right strategy and like different pieces. So I think that's cool because like I think in my head sometimes it's to like actually start doing things is going to take forever, but it's like, no, we can do this like and turn things around pretty quickly.
Yeah, about an hour from here in Lake Arrowhead, there's a family. They have their own homestead that they built literally on the side of the mountain, and they have goats and chickens, and they've got like 2 types of goats. They take the fur from the goats, and I forget the type of material, but it's super strong that's able to be woven from it. But they do forest foraging classes, which my wife and I went on, and then how to process what you get from the what you find in the forest. But they're like rocking it. They just got the place like 3-4 years ago, and they totally converted the whole side of the mountain side into this awesome sustainable homestead. And they've got pigs. It's amazing everything they're
That's
doing.
awesome.
So absolutely can be done. It does take a lot of work, man.
Yeah.
The amount of work that they've shared, but they're getting, because of all the cool things that they're making, they're bringing people in to come and help for those bigger tasks. And then the knowledge. Oh my God, that's the I think, talk about frequency and vibration and getting us back into in alignment with nature. When I was on this forest foraging class, just identifying the different edible foods that we can get right here in the forest, and we're consuming it. We're having like a salad for lunch. We're having this forest foraged salad, and as we're finding the names and connecting with the plants, I started this dialogue started to happen for me with the different plants, and we're learning through the books about what this plant does and what it's good for and all those different things. But I was learning what I was also learning just in the connection and I guess the consumption, but also the whole ritual of picking and doing the whole thing, is that a dialogue, we're open by doing that, and by seeking that type of knowledge, you're creating new dialogues with these consciousnesses, the plants, and you can learn from them in that sense. You can create that dialogue and have an intuitive connection for future healing, or getting the things that you may need from them in the future. And they can help guide you as you create those connections. So as we increase our, same with the garden and what I've got going in the greenhouse, the more you connect and go through that whole life process from growing your food to, farm to table type of situation, then you're strengthening these connections, these consciousnesses that have always exist. They're there. But for me, I didn't know you could have that dialogue until I started like having the dialogue, right? So, which I think for some of you guys may be like, yeah, no brainer. But for somebody like me who's been in the city and, living my life in that world, this is all new fun stuff. So it's very cool to connect in these ways. And I feel that reconnecting in these ways and making these connections is part of what's going to usher us into the new earth.
That's awesome. That's beautiful, Ruben.
Cool. Well, if any last questions, Lucas has his hand up. Let's see what Lucas has to say.
Hey guys. Hey Bridget. Just wanted to share that over the weekend, this weekend was a Star Knowledge Conference at Serpent Mound, and it's the Lakota people that put that on, kind of going along with what you were saying, Ruben, just the being connected with the land, and they're conscious of that connection, and it feels like they have a lot to share with us, and also a high level of consciousness of our star connections. So really just sharing that's fun and awesome that that's continuing to progress. Michael Lee Hill was there and he had a lot of beautiful things to share. In the hybrid conversation, I think it's fascinating how the variety of appearance differences between the different hybrid children. And it's just fascinating, like how complicated is all of this that's going on out there? Is this something that the Galactic Federation is organizing? Are the Greys working with that? It's just fascinating. And if you have any insights, I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah. I would say the Galactic Federation is not participating, at least in the programs that I was a part of. But I think there's so many. I think there's so much going on. But definitely even just within the hybrids that I'm aware of, oh my gosh, like the variety of what was created is like as extreme as you can possibly get. And that's what happens, I guess, when you're in experimentation. It's really, let's experiment. Let's like go for whatever. Yeah, which is beautiful. And I think that, again, I've said it before, but there's something to, okay, we have the racial conversation on Earth happening, and then it's like, okay, now let's open other species. It's like, wow, that's like a whole, like that opens just like a whole other level of integration that's required, like interspecies acceptance, which I've felt at different times because it's such an extreme variety. So yeah, I agree with you.
So as far as the Greys go, you don't feel like their program is a part of the Galactic Federation oversight type of a collaboration thing?
Not from what I've been told. I mean, maybe like Ruben, maybe you have more information on that, but I think it was like, yeah, not a part of the like agreement because it. Go ahead.
Would that fall more under the Draconian Empire that seems to be a part of Earth's present, mostly past?
Yes and no. I don't think, like there's some schools where it's like unintentionally, where it's benevolent intentions, though it through malevolent coercion, right? Or like against the will, or it's like, I'm going to do this thing that's going to be for the betterment of humanity and for the betterment of my species and my race, but it's going to take coercion and like rape, like, so it's like, oh gosh. So I think, but then some of it is supposedly intentionally like malevolent. So I think it's just a vast like array, and so much of it too is it gets so tricky because it's so mixed in a bazillion time possibilities.
Right.
So it's like which one are we like talking about right now? Because it starts to get like so multidimensional in that aspect.
There is no history. Everything is now, right?
Yeah.
And so that does make the whole, like, how do you approach that aspect of ancestry when everything is now?
Everything is now, and it's that's the point, is everything is now. So that which was history is now, and that which was unresolved and unacknowledged is playing out now. And so because of that, it's like so beautiful and healing to like acknowledge those past challenges that have happened so that they can integrate and shift. And they do, like they do. I mean, it's just incredible working with our present experience and how that can shift in the galactic conversation too, because I've experienced it, because within our own morphogenetics, our own energetic genetic fields, when we shift something, it shifts our genetic line. When we shift something, it shifts the timeline. We know this. And so how can that shift, the galactic timelines as well? Because that's what a lot of people do that do my work. They're like, okay, I'm like cleaning out, all my like genetic human lines. And then once I get through the genetic human lines, I'm going back and like clearing like the genetic cosmic lines. Like, woo, like that's good work right there. To be.
Can you describe, just like touch on what clearing that looks like what your process is?
Yeah. In its simplest form, it's acknowledging the breaks where love cannot flow. AKA World War II, my grandpa's in like the Japanese trenches, as an example. And saw his best friend die. Like, so it's like that's a break in like the flow of love. That's a moment of trauma. And because of that, there's a like clog in the pipes of like the flow of energy. And what wants to be happening, and I've experienced it in the genetic flow, is literally like this pulse spiral, like through our backs, like through our genetics, that's just like this living, blooming energy that then gets passed on to the next generation. And it's man, it's just incredible. It's the whole Avatar AWA thing, like we're all tapped into this like pulsing tree. Like that's the energy of what it wants to be. And so as we like just acknowledge these points like within our own lines, you might know some of them consciously, you might not know what they are. And that's part of it, is we go and like find where those pieces are, and then we acknowledge them and mend them. And then that current can flow. Then we have so much more life force, and those current, because everything's now, those pieces don't come up and block us in our lives, which, even though it's like, well, how is that relevant? Like, how is like my grandpa in the trenches like relevant to now? And it's like, well, my uncle like has almost died in a concrete trench that he was digging. And like these guys that were working for him did die in that trench. So it literally like replays until it's looked at. And it can be the subtlest of energies. It can just be like depression. It can be like loss or sadness. And so when these things are mended, they don't live in us anymore. And that's where that empowerment comes in, that we're reclaiming in that wholeness. And when we're more whole, and when we have that support, then we can like really be on our missions, and get that clear information of like how to move forward. And then we're moving forward whole, rather than like what's playing out now in the world is a bunch of wounded people, like, I don't know, making up a bunch of rules with each other. Like, what are you doing? Like, who is deciding this? A bunch of wounded people, So it's like, okay, let's get ourselves whole, and then we can help guide the ship, of consciousness. And it really does make a huge difference. Yeah, I've seen it like play out. So yeah, hope that
Awesome.
helps.
It really feels like the connecting is such an important aspect of the healing. So really appreciate you being here and sharing what you have to share.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the epic questions. Yeah, presents.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucas. Yes. One thing that Lisa Royale, I really respect her work, and she helps sort of diffuse these different projections that the New Age community has on the Dracos or the Zeta or different thing, is that there's different tiers. So there's sort of like past versions, how we perceive time, right? Past versions of the Zetas, present versions of the Zetas, and then the future versions of the Zetas. And her galactic cards, I just was bringing up here, is a great example. She's got an app now that can go through it, but basically it sort of shows that the old tier 1 Zetas, right, that came in and did the abductions were unaware. So through the abduction experience, and then they created the hybrid programs, and then through the connections with the humans and the human mothers, and them realizing this lack of empathy, lack of emotion, is what's keeping these children from growing and from reproducing. So the mothers were brought in, and then just for them being around the mothers, they started to reactivate their emotional bodies. And so there's this whole story created that shows that they were able to evolve past their limitations in shutting down their emotional bodies. And so the future versions of the Zetas have this connection. They have reactivated their emotional bodies and now are able to connect in a more healthy way with themselves and with other species. So there's these different tiers of the Zetas, like tier 1, depending on the timeline, is they're no emotional body. They're just going to be very dissective in what they do. And then there's these future versions. So I guess what I'm trying to offer is that there is an evolution through all of these different species. And we don't have to just say, oh, that's Zeta bad, Draco bad, blah, 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 bad, or Palladian good, but in the Palladians too, they've had their crazy, evolutionary Lyrans, like all of them, all of the Syrians. There's some really dark stuff that's been coming out from, we thought the Syrians were super cool and clear, and now finding out that, Syrians were helping the Anunnaki come in and create slave races and all this other stuff. So they've all got their baggage. They've all have overcome their baggage. And it's about aligning with which version of that race that can best serve our story, right? And their evolutionary story, and how they overcome that's where the lesson lies, and how we can adapt that for humanity. So I guess I just use that. Yeah, go ahead.
It seems like that is some of our shadow work, is looking at the more intense aspects of the history of our DNA. If I understand correctly, there's approximately 20 contributors to our DNA, or different races. And the reptilians represent a couple parts of that. And it feels like really looking at our whole selves, the darkest parts and where we've come from, and embracing that as part of the transformation process. And it feels like we're serving them as well, to help the work that we do ripples, I guess. The work we're able to do individually ripples out
Absolutely.
into the universe.
Into the universe. That's right.
Yeah.
One small pebble into the lake, and it just spreads out for eternity. All right. Well, with that said, I think we reached our time. Right on time, actually. Again, Bridget, thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom. One more time, how do people find you? And I'll put it in the bottom of this, anyways. But
Yeah, just my website is great. Then you can go around. I've got a lot of my newest content is all podcast. not as much YouTube. So if you want any new stuff, yeah, you can check that out there too. And thanks for everything you're doing, Ruben, into this community. It's super fun to be with you guys.
Yeah, would love to continue the conversation for more, less of a lag of a check-in. Maybe down the road we'll have
Yeah,
you
for
come
sure.
check in again.
Yeah.
See where. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ruben.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you like this interview. We actually do this every week on my membership portal page. And you can access it through interviewwithed.org or click on the link somewhere in here. I'll put a link and come over and join us. You too can ask questions. Every week we have new special guests and you get to ask questions directly to the channelers and to the beings that they channel. So see you in the portal.